Welcome. This is Dr. Robert Hasty. I'm the host for the OCOM Podcast, Modern Medical Education, where we gather experts to discuss various topics in modern medical education, with the focus of today's episode being on financial aid and medical education. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Robert Hasty. I'm joined today by a very special person, our founding director of financial aid, Marissa Miles. Marissa, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Dean Hasty. Happy to be here.
Exciting to have you here. And what's new in the world of financial aid at OCOM?
All right. Well, we've had some exciting developments lately. Let me start by saying that the biggest development is the approval of our foundation board partnership. And so, guys, this is what's going to start to bring in those beautiful scholarships that we've been looking for the last couple years, and getting ready to bring in classes with some recruitment and current student scholarships. And so we are out there right now hitting the road for donors and starting to build that program. That is probably the top priority and the most exciting in our world.
Excellent. I love it. So welcome. Also with us today is Lidio Junksi. He is the inaugural class vice president. And Marissa recommended that you come to the show to discuss this important topic of financial aid. So welcome, Lidio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Good. So anyway, I figured I'd start off by asking Marissa, just talk a little bit about, your vision of financial aid at OCOM and, what you're working on right now.
All right. Well, it's been a phenomenal first year with the students here, and we, had a great kickoff to the financial aid program. We are a school that is currently utilizing private student loans. We are not a part of the federal loan program yet. That is in the horizon in about 3 to 4 years, potentially. Of course, keeping an eye on what's going on in the political arena of federal financial aid, of course. We'll always keep that on our toes for the next couple years as we prepare to possibly transition to federal aid. In addition to that, so we kicked off the year with the incoming class, and we were able to initiate a lot of cool things within our financial literacy and debt management program. We've had a very healthy money talk session, and so this is where we bring in different speakers from all different kinds of backgrounds, whether it's financial planners or actual business owners, different people to come in and give presentations to the students on topics that they are also getting an opportunity to choose as well. And so we've done some great sessions already on savings and fund building, and what does retirement look like after medical school and residency when you get ready to start to pay into those things. And I'm gonna save a little bit of this for Lidio, because he's been a big part of building what we call FAB, which is our Financial Assistance Advisory Board. So I'll save a little magic for that later.
I definitely want to hear about FAB.
Yeah. So just to speak to that a little bit, so it's a student-led program, which is amazing. It's led under the direction of Ms. Miles as well as Ms. Mobes, who is also our part of our financial aid team here at OCOM. Overall, so FAB is essentially a group of 8 students, myself included, where we all we'd like to call ourselves financially literate, or at least in the process of learning. And what we're doing is we're just kind of getting together and we're coming up with ideas and concepts for how can we make the financial aid process easier for students at OCOM. It's a different realm for all of us. We come all from STEM backgrounds. It's quite rare to be completely financially literate coming into med school and even sometimes leaving med school. So I think for us, a big focus is different sessions, different people, bringing in the right resources for our students, and even our clubs and organizations here at OCOM. We have 30 clubs and organizations. How do we allow them to fundraise properly? How do we teach them about budgeting, teach them about, bringing their community in? So that's kind of what the big picture is about, taking OCOM as a community and educating all of us, putting us all on the same playing field.
Excellent. Very, very, very cool. So, you talked a little bit about, what's new in financial aid with the, there's some folks who are saying that, we may actually not have Title IV or federal loans in the near future. So, that's one of the biggest things, I guess, coming out right now. So, yep. Yeah. Anything else that you're hearing out there about that?
Well, I'm very excited. I'm getting ready to head to a strictly medical school financial aid conference next week in Austin, Texas, where the financial aid administrators from all over the country in our medical schools, both allopathic and osteopathic, will be getting together to discuss these topics and really get a clear understanding, as much as we can, of where we're standing and what do they see happening in the future. Right now, there is a standstill in that the Department of Education still exists. There is no pulling of federal funding right now, and so it's just paying attention to what continues to come through our communication lines from the federal government and understanding the implications of future changes to the program and how that would affect us here at OCOM and our students.
Great. Excellent. Now, you mentioned scholarships, with our this new foundation that recently got stood up. Talk to me a little bit about scholarship opportunities right now for OCOM students, and if you could also mention a little bit about the military and the VA scholarships that a number of our students have received.
Sure. So, I'm given the privilege of being able to present to our students on interview day, right? And so they come in and, not every school allows financial aid to present on interview day. So sometimes it's unique for these students. It's the only financial aid information they're getting on their interview tour. And so one of the things I like to point out to them is I say to the group, especially when we're in-person interviews, I say, hey, how many of you are struggling on your scholarship search, right, as an incoming N1 student? And almost all hands go up. And I think Lidio can even speak to this as well. It is a struggle for even me as a financial aid administrator that's been in medical schools for 15 years to find a lot of opportunities at the M1 level. They're out there, they're few and far between. And so when you're looking at external opportunities this year, I'm very excited that we have had a M1 student incoming awarded an American Osteopathic Foundation scholarship already, which was an opportunity that came across my desk and I got out to the students right away. In addition to that, with your help, Dean Hasty, we're building phenomenal relationships with associations such as FOMA, so our Florida Osteopathic Medical Association, which also just awarded 3 of our students. It was only supposed to be 2, but we must have really knocked it out of the park with our applications. And so we got 3 scholarships this year to our incoming students. But I stress to those students, don't lose hope, continue the search. I tell our current students too, yes, it takes several hours, right? You've got to work on a good essay. You've got to do the search. You've got to find them. However, as a medical student, if you get a scholarship for $2,000, $5,000, there are no jobs right now for medical students for a couple hours of work for $2,000, $5,000. So the effort is definitely worth it. And so those are kind of the external opportunities, but also just to share with the community that's listening to us today, especially if there's applicants, do not get frustrated. The money will come. And the money comes once we start to build these foundations, like our foundation, which is called the Global Health Sciences Scholarship and Research Foundation. Again, a partner of OCOM that is going to be helping us build scholarship opportunities. But what I've seen happen in my career is that by the M3, M4 year, that's when the donors really start flooding in with the scholarships. And that is because typically in the medical school arena, donors are doctors, right? And so if you have an anesthesiologist that would like to give a scholarship, what do we think they want to give a scholarship to? A student that's going to be an anesthesiologist. What do we know? That typically a majority of students don't know what they want to be when they grow up till M3, M4 year. And so that's where you'll see a lot of those specific funds start to come through from donors. And so I try to, relieve students to say, you may not see an abundance right now, but it's coming. And I'm looking forward to helping to build those opportunities in the next couple years. You did mention HPSP. So HPSP is our Health Professions Scholarship Program. This is universal for both allopathic and osteopathic schools as a scholarship program. For those that don't know, the Health Professions Scholarship Program encompasses the military scholarships for medical students. So, and also physician assistants, nurses, across the board, the medical field, they support with these scholarships. So we focused on getting our doctor students to apply. It includes all 4 branches, so that is your Army, Navy, Air Force, and veterans. And what I share with the students is that when we're looking at the economy right now and the cost of a private loan for medical education, this is the biggest bang for your buck out there. It's 100% tuition and fees coverage, including health insurance. It also includes living expenses per month of up to $2,800 a month for your rent, your food, your personal expenses. On top of that, the Army, Navy, and Air Force also give a $20,000 sign-on bonus within the first couple months that you're in medical school. That will be deposited. Funny story, Dean Hasty. One of my current Air Force students came to my door the day they got their $20,000 sign-on bonus deposited and had a big smile and, said, "Miss Miles, I got my money." I'm like, "Yes." And he goes, "You're never going to believe what I'm going to do with it." And I said, "You're right. I'm a little nervous." And he goes, "I'm going to pay off my undergraduate loan." Bingo. This is where the pieces are falling in place to understand how to utilize these programs to really prepare you for your future financial health. And I share this with the students on interview day, but then I say, you have to be self-actualized enough to understand that you're signing up for a service scholarship. So for every year that you get funding, that is a year of service you will be giving back after residency. And so I think it's very important for future students out there to understand that service component to the biggest bang for your buck program out there. I just want to conclude by saying I've 15 years in medical school. I've never had this many HPSP recipients in one class, nor have I ever had every branch represented. And so for students out there, if you need to speak to a fellow student or a recruiter that are in these programs and get some information, we have the access for you.
Great. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's a heck of a deal being able to get all of your tuition paid for, fees paid for, and for cost of living. I mean, it's an incredible deal.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then a lot of people, may not know this, but this VA thing, the Veterans Affairs, or Veterans Administration, this HPSP that they started, it's a relatively new thing. And when I talked to other medical school deans, none of them even knew about it.
Yeah.
And we, I think, got one of the first or the earlier ones in the United States, if not the first. I don't know, maybe there have been other ones, but I know it's a hot topic right now.
Yes, it is.
And and the ability to, for folks that want to serve, the veterans, but wouldn't necessarily want to make that commitment to go in the military, it's a heck of a deal. And then the folks that do go in the military, my understanding is that the time during medical school actually counts towards the service nowadays, which is something that didn't years ago. And I guess towards was it the 20-year retirement or something like that? It's a
Correct.
big thing,
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And of course, I always love those like commissioning ceremonies too, right? I mean, I think that's like one of the coolest things when they do the commissioning. And, we just had our first commissioning ceremony here a couple of months ago. It was like kind of amazing.
Yeah.
So,
and we're excited. We're going to be bringing, as part of a collaborative program with the admissions department here, the admissions department is getting ready to spearhead a Zoom informational session for new admits. We'll be having some Zoom sessions over the next couple months, and one of them will be an HPSP event where we will bring in current students, we will bring in recruiters, we will bring in our faculty member, Dr. Sean Martin, who is a graduate of the he was Air Force HPSP. And so we'll be having some sessions to really engage the students and teach them about the program.
excellent.
And I think just even from an OCOM standpoint, speaking on HPSP, I think it's the community we have here is just amazing. We have specifically, again, so many students, a lot of my friends who are in HPSP, and they're even encouraging each other, to
Yes.
apply, where it's not just like, okay, you apply and then you go through the program, but Even current students are encouraging other current students, you should apply this year, maybe consider it, at least put it on your list of things that you can think about, just because the financial gain from it for the service component, it's once in a lifetime. So yeah, I definitely think it's an amazing program, and it should definitely be considered, especially if you're in a situation where you do need financial assistance.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember our friend Major Gonzalez from the U.S. Army. When she was, and she's been, terrific. What a great, colleague and
Definitely.
friend of ours. But she was telling us that the last 5 years, I think it's been, out of their 300 spots nationally for the Army HPSP, they didn't meet their mission, meaning, fund all 300 of those per year. So there's literally just scholarships just waiting for folks that might be interested, which is, I think it's a heck of a deal. And of course, we love the veterans and love the military. So excited for and appreciate all the students interested in doing that, which is, I think, kind of cool. Now, you mentioned a little bit about government loans versus private loans. And right now, we're eligible for private loans. Tell me a little bit about the difference between the private and the government loans.
Sure.
Melissa.
And so, especially at this point in time, compared to any discussion we would have tried to have last year, now that I have a class here of borrowers, I am able to pull actual statistics of what our private loan program looked like compared to the federal loan program. And so, there was a lot of apprehension, both by myself and my team and administration, as well as on behalf of the students, regarding the current economic status of interest rates, right? Because not everybody realizes that your student loan interest rates are directly tied to what is going on federally. And so for the last year and a half, when the government has been trying to beat back inflation by increasing interest rates, and then in the last year, they finally started talking about decreasing. This has a direct impact on both the federal and private interest rates that students are given. And so one of the benefits that I saw is that students that are in a federal loan program, they get assigned an annual interest rate for the year at the beginning, and that's it. You're in there, you're stuck, right? However, with the private loans, the rates are based on personal credit and whatever's going on at the federal level in regards to the base, correct? And so as medical students here and other students that are utilizing private student loans, when the feds started to drop those interest rates, which we've had 3 drops in the last, 6 months, I think, Lidio, right? We've had 3 drops in the interest rate. Our students had the opportunity to benefit from those drops if they hadn't applied yet or they were in a variable rate product. They're benefiting now from those drops in interest rates, whereas federal, you're in it for the year, so you will not benefit from any drops. That is what it is. So that's one of the differences that I've seen. In addition to that, when we started to pull the statistics once the class got here, the federal rates this year are at about, for the unsubsidized and Grad Plus, which is primarily what students borrow. There's no more free money at the graduate level unless it's a scholarship, typically. The federal government says, I helped you with your master's with Pell Grant and subsidized loans. Now you want a master's or your doctorate or your professional degree. I'm sorry, you're on your own. It's unsubsidized loans and Grad Plus loans that accrue interest the first day you take them, just like private student loans. And so those interest rates this year were at 8.1% for unsubsidized loan and 9.1% for Grad Plus.
9.1%.
9.1%. And Grad Plus also has, I think it's, I'm going to say 4% origination fee is what they're up to on top of the 9% interest.
So 4 points up front.
Yep, to take the loan. And a majority of medical students in our country, if they're borrowing to pay for medical school, they will have to borrow the Grad Plus loan. About 90% of students that are borrowing have to borrow the Grad Plus loan to meet their needs. And so when we saw that number of the interest rate for the Grad Plus, when we did our math, our average interest rate for our new class came in at 9.3%. So we weren't that far off the scale, which was great to learn once we've got all those interest rates in. And again, the interest rates are based on the student's personal credit history plus the addition of a cosigner. If they can get a cosigner, they're guaranteed almost a 1 point difference in reduction in interest rate if you get a qualified cosigner. So we're always stressing cosigners just to help. But those are the big differences in what you're seeing in regards to interest rates and the cost of the loans and what's coming into the school this year.
Wow, interesting. Let me ask you this. What do you anticipate the average indebtedness of our students, or I guess you could look at the national average since we don't have a graduating class yet, in terms of overall indebtedness after a medical school education?
And it differs from allopathic to osteopathic, but you're basically looking at about a 250 average graduation debt these days. For our first year, our cost of attendance was $105,000, meaning students could borrow up to $105,000. If we had a majority of our students borrow the max at $105,000, then our average for this year would have been close to $105,000. However, our average came in at $70,000-ish, and that is one of the primary effects on that in having a lower rate, even though they were allowed to take 105, was the efforts we made through our required debt management program. And so we do have a required debt management program here in addition to the optional Money Talk series and participating in the Financial Assistance Advisory Board. If you are a borrower, you are enrolled in a debt management program here, where we're going to work with you to make as many positive impacts on your debt load before you graduate that we can. And so one of those includes a required entrance counseling, where the student is going to sit with us and determine exactly what they need to borrow. So we'll point out, hey, I'm giving you $1,800 in rent, but are you paying $1,800 in rent, or are you roommating? Are you coming with a partner or a spouse and you're only paying $1,000? Well, then I don't want you borrowing the extra $800 a month. We're going to reduce that out of your debt and make a positive impact, right? And then when they came in and when they sat down with us, we also looked at their budgets. So they were required to complete a budget worksheet, which allowed us to look at different budget categories and make sure that students first were adequately covered, right? I want to make sure that our day-to-day needs of housing and food, that there isn't any insecurities. And then just to see, hey, how is your budget? You may have thought you were going to spend $300 a month in recreational, and then the first month of medical school happened, and we're not going out as much as we thought, right? So let's make an impact on that debt number and reduce how much we're borrowing for recreational. And so we do those meetings, and two things came out of those meetings. One, the students that did the budget worksheets and determined that they overborrowed returned over $130,000 to the lenders this year. And that is money that came straight out of their bank accounts after looking at their budget worksheets with me. And we decided, hey, I borrowed a little too much and it costs, so let me return it. And so that's really exciting to share that we returned back to lenders straight out of bank accounts $130,000 in the fall semester. In addition to that, the one other thing that came out of it, and then I'm going to have Lidio speak on this a little bit, having gone through the program, was the development of the food pantry. And that was in meeting with a couple students, I was seeing some food insecurities. And so immediately, when I hear a student saying, yeah, well, I feel like I need to work DoorDash to make ends meet right now. That's not what I want to hear in a budget meeting. And so with your support and OCOM's entire faculty staff and our supporters out in the community, we've built a phenomenal food pantry to help alleviate any food insecurities within our class.
Great.
Yeah, and just to speak a little bit on that, even regarding just like the returning of funds, and just the required debt management programs. I mean, I was one of those people where, I initially met with Miss Miles and, I said, I need the full amount. I need the full amount. My financial situation was looking a little varied at the start. And then, school actually started, everything changed, and we had our secondary meeting, which was, again, required. She requires the initial, how much do you need? And then the secondary, do you still need this much? What's your budget looking like now after starting? And, I was still under the impression, I was like, I need it all. It's all there. And then she was like, well, have you been using it? Like, is it sitting in your bank account? And I was like, it is just sitting there. And then she was like, let's just take it and give it back. And if, account for the fact that you still need this much for, the basic necessities, food, water, power, et cetera. But can you return some of this money to alleviate, because that interest is accruing in your bank every month. So can we alleviate some of that? And I was one of those students that contributed to that number. And then again, speaking on the food pantry, everybody's financial situation is just so varied. And we did see a need amongst the students of just, can we have a basic thing of just basic necessities? And the food pantry itself is just, it's phenomenal. Whether you need something, before a test, a quick snack, whether you really do need a meal, there's so many different options. There's vegan, there's vegetarian, there's regular options. There's also different necessities, toothbrushes, toothpaste, things that if you're struggling, if maybe you went over your budget this month, or you went over you over borrowed or under borrowed, et cetera, you can, make ends meet until the next time that you meet with Ms. Miles, or until you, sort your situation out. So I think it's wonderful.
Excellent. Great. Yeah, and I'm, commend both of you for your leadership on the food pantry. I mean, I think it's an incredible thing for this organization. It also shows, how much everybody cares,
Yes.
which was all donated, 100% of it was donated by faculty and staff. And, you go by the room, it's well stocked.
It is.
It is. Yep.
And I think it just goes to show, what a caring team that we have. And, I've said this before, but, I've been in a lot of different medical schools, and I'll say this is the most caring faculty and staff I've ever, had the honor of working with before. It's really inspirational to me, how much everybody really cares for the students. And hopefully, and I think the students feel it too, the support that they have and,
Yep.
and everything, which, again, congrats and thank you, both of you, for your leadership on making that happen.
Yes.
So.
Thank you.
Excellent. So any other items that we haven't talked about, or things that you think we should discuss from either one of you?
I do want to share that here at OCOM, I am a certified accredited financial counselor. And so just like when we talk about what we have here in support for students, when you have mental health counseling and you have learning specialist counseling, I'm also an accredited financial counselor, which means that I'm not only trained to be in higher ed and working in this financial arena, but I go out into the community and work with families, and I understand beyond just financial aid in regards to budgeting and what's coming next when students enter residency and how to take them through that. One of the things that's going to be unique about our financial aid program here at OCOM is that I have made the commitment to not only serve current students, but also alumni. Because a lot of times what happens is that schools will meet with their graduating M4 students and help them get started in their loan repayment program as residents. But once we get to the end of residency, your situation can be completely different. You could be married now. You could have children now. You could be preparing to buy a house. You could, whatever the case may be, you're going to go from making 80 grand to 200 grand and, want somebody to kind of take you through the next step. And so I've opened the door to our future alumni to also come back to their accredited financial counselor here at OCOM for that additional help when they're transitioning out of residency as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal, and just something I'd like to speak on, just again regarding Miss Miles and her incredible team, as well as just, even to future students listening to this and, prospective students that are just considering OCOM. But I know, from working a lot with the admissions committee and working a lot with just social media in general, helping answer questions, a big question always comes up of, how can I afford coming to OCOM with there not being federal loans? Different situations might not allow for a private loan situation. And, I just have to tell, if you have any skepticism or apprehension about it, the team here is to support you. Miss Miles and her team are excellent with, if you take everything, including the required debt management counseling, the optional debt management counseling, the financial advisory board, the opportunity of scholarships, everything here is to help you succeed. So, speaking from someone like myself, I'm a borrower. I came into medical school with the prospect of, I'm going to borrow everything I need for this education. So, speaking as a borrower, I'm very happy with the situation I'm in. I'm very confident that with the plan that, me and Miss Miles, and it's all individualistic, every student's different, that, I'm going to succeed and, everything will move in the right direction going forward.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And just like yourself, I too was a borrower, which I think is like consistent with like 88% of medical students across the country, right? And our tuition, is pretty reasonable. I think we're, probably around, or if not a little bit lower than national average for private medical schools at $55,000 in tuition and $5,000 in fees, which seems like a lot. It's definitely more than I paid when I went to medical school 25 years ago, but or I guess 29 when I started. But I think the value is there. I always tell folks, look at the practicing physician out there compared if you don't go to medical school, what your income changes. And I don't know what the average nowadays for a person with a bachelor's degree, how much the annual income is, but I would suspect that it's somewhere less than $100,000 a year, at least, average pay. And then if you look at the MGMA numbers, which is sort of the management association, nationally, I think they're saying that physician income annually is around $300,000 a year. And, and so it's a pretty good return on the investment. Like you said, you're projecting around about $250,000 of indebtedness that you're thinking that we're going to see, with the inaugural class. I mean, heck, spend $250,000 to have a over $200,000 delta in your income every year on average.
Correct.
It's a to me at least, it's a pretty good return on investment.
It's a win.
And I will tell you, and I'm glad that you're even offering that. I know you do the exit interview when they graduate, but also to let them come back at the end of residency, because I think that's a critical time, because all of a sudden your income goes from, I don't know how, $70,000 as a resident, or whatever the number is, to hundreds of thousands of dollars, right. And it's a big bump up in income, and of course people want to go out and they buy the big Mercedes and the house and all this other stuff. But I can tell you what I did. I tried to live as a resident when I first graduated residency, and tried to live on about the same income. I may have had a little bit of fun once in a while, but mostly the same income. And I was able to pay off all my student loans within 2 years. And I'll tell you, I was very, very proud when I did that. And I'll tell you, it was a very smart thing for me personally to do that. Yeah.
And that's a model that I follow. I have a visual, for that shows, what you're making as a residency or as a resident, right? So you're making probably by the time our class gets out there, the average will be close to 80 grand. I'm going to hope, with cost of living increases and such. So about 80 grand a year as a resident, right? But when you graduate and you go from 80 grand to 200 grand as practicing, the whole concept is continue to live like a resident until those loans are paid off. And so I have a whole visual that shows even if you just split that $200,000 salary in half and you start with $100,000 as your salary, which, hey, you're still getting a $20,000 raise from what you lived on as a resident, so you can get that nicer apartment, maybe some organic groceries finally, But you live on that 100 grand and you take that other 100 grand a year and dump it all on your loans, the loans will be gone within, depending on what your debt is, within 2 to 5 years, definitely, before even a 10-year loan forgiveness program would get rid of your loans. You are going to beat the interest, you're going to beat the program, the system, by continuing to live like a little nicer resident for a little while.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, excellent. Well, I'll tell you, this has been a great show. Any final comments, Marissa or Lidio?
No, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, this was exciting and fun. Thank you.
Excellent.
New for me.
well, thank you both. What a great program. And thank you for joining the OCOM Modern Medical Education podcast. Please join us again for our next episode where we discuss modern medical education. Thank you.